Are you looking for a complex and full-bodied wine, but yet you don't want to break the bank? Well, we have just the wine for you on this week's episode of The Average Wine Enthusiast. Hi there, everybody. My name's Mike LaPlante, and I'm The Average Wine Enthusiast. This week, I thought we would talk about a wine, a varietal to be more specific, called Carmenére. It's from Chile, mostly. It's its signature wine, Chile's signature wine. And I know I've mentioned it in a past episode, and it's got such a fantastic story to tell that I thought it would be great to feature it on a show. The great thing about Carmenére is it has the potential to be such an amazing bottle of wine for a relatively inexpensive price. And speaking to the average wine enthusiast, I know that's what a lot of folks are interested in. Give me a decent bottle of wine and don't make me pay a lot of money for it. Don't be a wine snob. Don't direct me towards $50 bottles of wine. This varietal, Carmenére, like I said, has the potential to be a great wine. And I'll get a little more specific about why there's the potential is there a little later on. But first, I want to get into the actual story of Carmenére. It's a fascinating story. A lot of folks think that Carmenére was originally from the Bordeaux region. And I think that's because it grew there probably for the longest period of time. It was grown there for centuries. And of course, like a lot of wine, a lot of vines, they were traveling all over the place because of the Romans. Having done some DNA tests, the people who do that kind of stuff with grapes, what are they called? They are called empalographers. What is an empalographer? I happen to write the definition down. He or she is an expert in the study and classification of cultivated varieties of grapes. So an empalographer, many of them probably, realize that Carmenére probably came from Spain. Enter the Romans, they take the vines and they spread them out through Europe. They do well in some places, they don't do so good in other places. One of the places that they brought them was back home to Italy, and they used it as a blending grape for the Sangiovese in the Tuscany region. But of course, it did make its way to Bordeaux. A lot of what has been written about the Carmenére growing in that area during that time was that it didn't do all that well. It was prone to fungus and bugs liked it, and it was a late harvest wine. So it had to stay in the fields. The grapes had to stay on the vines till the end of the season. And oftentimes what that means is a frost will come and kill your crop. Of course, that makes for a very disgruntled vineyard manager, and of course the people who pay for the grapes as well when that kind of stuff happens. So what then? In the middle of the 1800s, there was a fungus that got a bunch of the Carmenére in the Bordeaux region. And then a little later on, I want to say 1869, I think was the year that the phylloxera, which is a horrible disease that kills many fruit-bearing plants. It may even kill other types of plants. I'm not an expert in that field at all. But the phylloxera wiped out basically the majority of the grapes in Bordeaux. So when it came time to rebuild, put the pieces back together in Bordeaux, they chose grapes that weren't so prone to, fungus and bugs eating them, and the fact that they are hardy and they grow in France in that area with little difficulty. So what do you think happened to the Carmenére? See you later. We're not growing this grape anymore. So after that, many folks thought that Carmenére was lost. It was gone. It was virtually extinct. Of course, there's people who may have Carmenére growing in their back field somewhere, but as far as growing it and distributing it, most folks thought that it was extinct. Jump ahead about 100 plus years. In the 1990s, heck, I was alive then. The wine they were growing in Chile, was a lot of it was grown from immigrants who went there from Italy and Spain and French people as well. We have those same people here growing wine, and Chile was no exception. So those guys were growing their vines of what they thought was Merlot. And another good point to make out is that a lot of these European or people who originated from Europe, the way they grew their vineyards, it was what's known as a field blend. Instead of growing, all your Merlots over here and all your Cabernet Sauvignons over here, they just grew them all together. They knew that they were going to make some red wine out of the grapes that are growing in this field, so that they blended them right in the field. So what they noticed was that the Merlots there was two different kinds of Merlots. It turns out what was known as Chilean Merlot, which was different from the Merlot that they were used to back in the home country. But, you have the altitude and the ground and all that kind of stuff that is different. Then they had something known as the late harvest Merlot. Now, this Merlot was characterized because it had grown late into the season, which wasn't a problem in Chile. And its leaves turned really red, like how the leaves change on much of the trees or around North America anyway. Well, that happens to the grape leaves of the Carmenére grape plant. So there was those two Merlots, that's what they called them. There was the late harvest Merlot, and then there was the Chilean Merlot. Then in 1990 something, a gentleman by the name of Michel Bourgeois, he was an empalographer, and he had noticed that not only did the wine, they tasted different, they were distinctive, but also just the way they grew. There was slight differences in the shape of the leaf, slight differences in the shading of the skin on the grape and the way they sprouted, and of course there was the red leaf thing. He had never seen a Carmenére plant before, so they did a bunch of tests, and sure enough they realized that yes, this stuff they're growing in Chile is Carmenére. What a crazy discovery that there's all this Carmenére growing in Chile and no one even really realized it. So like I said, there is some Merlot that they would bottle as Merlot, but it turns out a lot of that stuff was a blend of Carmenére and Merlot. So that's a crazy story. Now, one of the things that characterizes Carmenére is the flavor profile that it has. It has a dominant bell pepper type of taste that can, become overpowering, obviously. And that's probably why it was used as a blending grape for, a long period of time, because it would add, a little bit of that type of flavor to another profile. So what is going on right now, like we're talking about, that was 1990 something. And I think in 1998, the government of Chile recognized that this was a grape they were going to make it their own. This is their signature wine, was Carmenére. So from that point on, in 1998 till the present day, the wine industry there is really trying to figure out what it's going to do with this varietal. A lot of them want to make those bell pepper spicy notes, they want to subdue them a little bit and make it a little more, they feel it would make it a little more accessible. Then there's the other train of thought is a lot of people want to embrace it and make sure that that doesn't get taken away and gets like homogenized or neutralized, because this is a very specific type of flavor profile in the wine that they want to keep and make it their own as well. So right now, every different bottle of Carmenére is different, and it only holds promise to get better as time goes on. So what I thought we would do is have some sips of two different types. No, they're just two Carmenéres, both from Chile. I believe they're both from the same place, the Concagua Valley, which is supposedly where the good stuff is supposed to be grown. I'm not sure that this one is. I don't believe it is. It is not. It's in a different region of Chile. So the two Carmenéres that I have, this one I opened yesterday, and it's relatively common. I see it it comes on the shelves at the LCBO, and then it goes away. And then the next year it comes back. And I think it's very good. It's a Sybris Carmenére. And I'm going to have a little sip of this. Often people say in Vivino, I'm going to probably mention that every episode now, at least every episode that I actually drink some, that it tastes better the next day, which I've already told you about that tip. If you think you have a decent bottle of wine and you really enjoy it, save some for the next day. And I see if it actually does taste better than you remember the next day. Because it's those first few sips that will really give you the proper impression that you want to have when you're drinking a pretty decent bottle of wine. So this is the Sybris, open for pretty close to 24 hours. There's some black cherries there. Really ripe plum. And there's a little green something in there, a little earthy tone, like a herb, rosemary. It's like rosemary, reminds me of. Oh, that's very, very soft on the palate. Tannins are almost non-existent, very smooth. Some vanilla. What else? More earthiness, like a moss kind of flavor. And the flavor of pepper without the sensation of tannins blasting your palate. Very nice. No green pepper. Or pepper, bell pepper at all, which is, like I say, a common, I wouldn't say complaint, but it's a common note that is common with Carmenére. So I'm just going to put that aside and give my palate a little rest while I introduce the other Carmenére that I'm going to have a sip of. And this is Antu. Now, I've had this before as well. I've had both of these before. I've drank these before. And this, by the way, this is a 2014. Explains the smoothness of it possibly. This is a 2015. Finding older Carmenére is not as easy as I think it should be. In the LCBO, the one that I usually go to that has the biggest selection of any LCBO in the area, there is some Carmenére in the Chilean aisle, and it's extremely inexpensive. No more than $14, and there's some that's $12. But I'm afraid to drink that, and I wouldn't drink it because it's all really young wine. I want to say there was a 2018 there and a 2017, and even in the vintages section, I bought a bottle of Winemaker's Lot Carmenére, and I thought it was a 2014, but when I got it home, it turns out it's a 2017. So I've yet to drink a wine that young. I'm sure there's lots of wines that are good when they're that young, but I can't bring myself to drink a red wine that young, and because no one, But I have heard that Carmenére is supposedly good when it's drank and young. I'm afraid to crack a bottle open when it's that young, just in case it has that characteristic of being young, something that I don't like at all. So I'm going to pour some Enthusiast. This was decanted about an hour and a half ago. Oh no, 2 hours. Quite possibly very good tomorrow. Now the color of that is way redder than that of the Sybaris. That's more darky. This is darky. It's more dark purple, whereas this is really red. I want to say that Carmenére is the word comes from Latin crimson or something that means red as well. This definitely has a red, a deep red color to it, and I cannot see through it at all. Alcohol content in the Enthusiast is 14.5. I've seen this go as low as 13.5. This one's 14. That one's 14.5. So that's probably the window, 13.5 to 14.5. Oh, that is nice. What is that? It's like I'm at the ocean side. I can smell like sea salt. And there is the smell of, is it just bell pepper? There was a pepper, bell pepper smell, definitely. But it's not bad. It's not green. It's not a green bell pepper, which I don't like to even eat, especially on my pizza. I don't like it at all. I wouldn't eat them. But there is a bit of bell pepper smell and a little bit of like hard candy. Very nice. Let's give it a sip. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. More firmer tannins, not as smooth. It seems a little more complex. It's plum, blackberry, currant. There's another greenish something in there, but it's not pepper. It's like celery, hint of celery. Very complex wine, and the finish is just, it's going. It's very persistent. Love that. And you know what? It's like there's a little bit of a leather quality to the finish. A little bit of spice. Obviously, just smoothing just now. Very nice. Enthusiast 2015. I highly recommend picking up a bottle of that stuff. I just bought that bottle the other day, whereas this was in my cellar. Hence the 2014 vintage of it. 2015, still available at my local LCBO. I would look for it at a local wine store near you if you want a decent bottle of wine. It was under 20 bucks. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact price of that, but it was definitely no more than $20, and it could have been even $18. So yeah, Carmenére. How did I get turned on to it? That's even a better story. Not as good as the story of Carmenére. But a friend of mine, Dan Taylor, lifelong friend, I've been in bands with him for over 30 years. Him and his wife are on vacation, and they shot some video and they posted it somewhere, Facebook or somewhere. And I heard one of them say, take a sip of wine, and they said, that's good wine. And of course, being a wine person, I'm thinking, oh, they're drinking wine. And they mentioned that the wine was good. So I'm wondering, what do they think is good wine? And they were in Mexico. I'm thinking, what kind of wine do you get in Mexico that's good wine? And it turns out it was Carmenére. Like, I looked at the video, zoomed in, I'm like, oh, they're drinking some Carmenére. Never heard of it before. And so, of course, within the next day or two, I had to go hunt out some Carmenére, and I was thoroughly impressed with those first few bottles that I bought. I don't remember exactly what they were, but I remember I was impressed enough to definitely put that varietal in a group of wines that I would look for. So yeah, I think that's what you should do as well. Expand your vocabulary and go and delve into a wine that you may not otherwise buy because you're always going for the Merlot or you're always going for a Pinot Noir. Go into a different section, pick up a bottle, use your Vivino app and see what other people think about it, and make your buying decision that way. I guess that's going to do it for this week. If you have any comments, leave them down below. And if you like the show, please subscribe. And I'd also like to thank the Big Organ Trio for letting me use their music at the beginning and end of the show. I'm Mike LaPlante, and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. Salute!